I'm Rob Skinner, and this is the Rob Skinner Podcast. In this episode, I talked to Ryan Painter, who leads a church in Cleveland, Ohio. I know Ryan from right before COVID. He invited me to come out and speak and for us to do a seminar for his church, and then COVID shut down everything. So we weren't able to get out there, but we did do an online seminar after that. And then he arranged for me to stay over in Cleveland with a family there while I was on my cross-country motorcycle trip. And so we've become friends over the distance. But recently, Ryan's been experiencing some great spiritual victories in his church and has been seeing God move in a powerful way. And I thought we've got to get him online here to share what God is doing there in Cleveland. All this and more on the Rob Skinner Podcast. Welcome back to the Rob Skinner Podcast. My goal is to inspire you to live a no-regrets life, make this life count, and multiply disciples, leaders, and churches. Ryan, I want to welcome you to the program. It's great to have you.
Great to be here.
Well, Ryan, how did you become a Christian?
All right. I was a junior at The Ohio State University in the 90s guy. And so I was at college at Ohio State and just kind of living my total worldly life, and some things that had happened. And I started thinking more and more about God. Maybe my sophomore year and definitely my junior year. And I was going through, I basically was kind of like a lost little puppy in life. I was going through a lot of different things where it's kind of hard to explain, but I had this big time like party in life type thing going on. But I was also dealing with, behind the scenes, a major kind of just anxiety disorder. And back in the 90s, that was not something that was very talked about or recognizable. And so I was struggling specifically with like panic attacks and things like that. And I was just really unhappy in life. I didn't know where my spot was. I didn't know who I was. I wanted desperately to be the party guy. That was my whole identity in high school and college. But the anxiety stuff, I was almost like afraid to continue down that path. And I started thinking about God. And next thing you know, I'm in a Methodist church and just kind of doing my thing and feeling really good. Like, hey, I'm a college kid who goes to church. Like I'm cranking with the Lord. Nothing else in my life was godly or spiritual. But my junior year, I was at a real low point and had really cried out to God and said, I don't know what to do. At that point, I had said, I just can't go drinking anymore. But I remember specifically praying, I don't know what else to do. This is like my whole life. This is my whole everything. Right. I need help. If I'm going to quit this, I need help. And I went back to college. That was over like a winter break. And I went back to college. And sure enough, I got invited out to church and met right there on campus. And I was like, all right, let's try this. And I went and I absolutely loved it. And it was a mission team. So it was one of our church plantings to Columbus, Ohio. They had just started it late 1996. And I just saw the church grow and grow and grow. I was stubborn as can be. They kept asking me to do Bible studies, and I kept telling them, no. And I really what I was looking for, Rob, is I felt like I had found this gem, but it was perfect. Like I now had spiritual friends, and I felt godly. But I was also totally still in the world. And eventually I studied the Bible and realized, no, this is not going to work. I need to pick. And it took me a bit, but I chose correctly and became a disciple.
So you became a disciple that junior year?
Shortly after junior year. Yeah.
It's crazy you mentioned that. That's exactly when I became a Christian. My junior year, I'd been partying hard for the first couple of years, but at that point I'm like, this is not the road I want to go down. And, talking about Ohio State, I've interviewed some people who were at Ohio State. Ron Drabo, wasn't he there?
Yeah, that's a little before my time. Yeah.
Okay,
Ohio
so
State's
there
got
must
this cool history with the Church of Christ.
So it must have been kind of started and then restarted or something like that. I guess I don't want to get too far off into the weeds, but it's definitely got a good tradition.
It does. It absolutely does. But it was 1996, and we were part of kind of the Chicago family of churches at that point. And so they said, let's start our own mission team. And so a lot of the people that had been around, they immediately started coming around,
Got it.
So from that kind of 70s group, it was really awesome.
That's really cool. Now, how did you meet your wife, Kareen?
Okay, so I was once I was in, I was all in, and well, I mean that's a disciple, right? You got to be all in. So, but I got very, I was a pretty passionate guy, and once I'd made my mind up and overcome my obstacles, I was dialed in, and so I graduated maybe about a year and a half later, and minister asked me if I would go into the ministry. I said, sure, that sounds fun. I had a computer science degree at my ministry. That was a fun talk with parents, but
oh my gosh.
So I was the campus minister at Ohio State for maybe about one semester. I had no clue what I was doing.
Right.
But then there was a kind of a reshuffling. And so they, the minister and his wife, Tom and Sydney Caswell, they moved up to Cleveland, Ohio, and brought me along with them. And I loved Ohio State. But if you know me, I am a Cleveland guy. I was born, raised, I'm Cleveland. And so I'm like, we're moving to Cleveland? Like, okay, let's do that. and it was that first year that we were there. The church had this awesome, it was 1999, had this great year. And during that year, my wife, who was working downtown, was reached out to. And she studied the Bible and became a disciple. And back in those days, man, we didn't mess around. It was like maybe 3 or 4 months later after she was baptized, she came on the full-time ministry staff and we began working together. And I felt like I hit the jackpot. And so we started working in the campus ministry together. And and kind of the rest is history. So we spent another about year and a half in Cleveland, started dating, got married, literally went on a honeymoon, and then it was off to Toledo, Ohio to start a mission team and start the church in Toledo, Ohio. And
wow.
So it was a whirlwind. Like my first 4 years as a disciple, it was unbelievable, like how fast everything went. I went from pagan to church leader, church planting leader, you know what I mean?
I love it.
Very short period of time. And so, remember.
Yeah. Okay. So baptized in 96, married what year?
Married in 2001.
2001.
Baptized
when? Okay.
97.
So, okay. Baptized 97. Okay. So then what year? Okay. Give me like an overview of your ministry career since that time and where have you been? Tell me a little bit about your ministry journey.
Sure thing. Yeah. So in 2001, we went to start the church in Toledo, Ohio, and it was awesome. We spent 10 years in Toledo. Toledo, I love me some Toledo. I'm a Northern Ohio guy. And so both my children were born in Toledo. Toledo's about 2 hours away, a little less than 2 hours away from Cleveland, to Cleveland's west. And we were there for about 10 years. I then started experiencing some real challenges, back to kind of the anxiety stuff that I had mentioned before. That's a whole nother podcast, but I basically got to a point where I'm like, I don't know if I can continue to do ministry. And my friend Tom, who had led the church in Cleveland, he was out in New England, and he threw me a lifeline and said, hey, man, why don't you come out here? We'd like to hire you as the campus minister here in Worcester, Massachusetts, and kind of rehab, if you will, from with all the anxiety issues that I was having. And, we won't have to preach as much, take the pressure off. And that really saved my ministry career. So we went out to Worcester for 5 years and it's kind of dealt with a lot of stuff. And then about, like I said, 5 years later, all of a sudden I get a call from the minister in Cleveland. And he said, hey, looks like I'm going to be moving out to Denver. Would you be interested in moving to Cleveland and leading the church? And I was like, oh my goodness. At that point, I really, really wanted to, but I didn't know if I was quite ready for it. We put our name in the hat and interviewed and got the job. And I've been here for the last, I think it's moved here in 2017. So it's been about, what is this, year number 8 for us here in Cleveland.
Wow. Okay. So 8 years in Cleveland now. Let's go a little bit back to this whole anxiety, panic attack. Ministry is like loaded with pressure. I mean, Paul writes about it. He says, daily I feel the pressure for all the churches. I mean, there's just anxiety baked into the job description. What were you experiencing? What was going on in your private life, and how did you alleviate it? What kind of treatment did you get? What kind of diagnosis did you have? What helped?
Yeah, it's really interesting because me and anxiety, I'm a pretty carefree guy. Like I'm a, hey, do you want to go
Right.
to the ministry?
Sure.
Sure, let's
You
do
seem
this.
like that.
Hey,
Right.
let's do this. Let's do that. So I am not a worrywart. That's not my thing. I have a very specialized problem where I can have these panic attacks, and a panic attack it's just a horrendous thing, and it's even worse when you don't know what it is. And so when I was in college, I started experiencing these panic attacks. First one, I went out and I was high as a kite one time, and and that was my first ever one. It was, just marijuana, and actually that's actually oftentimes how people get a panic disorder introduced into their life. It's from kind of a bad drug experience, and that's exactly what happened to me. And then anytime I touched drugs after that, I would immediately go into this state of just terror. I don't even know how to explain it. Terror would be the right word. Like, it's not like, oh, I'm nervous. It was, I feel like I'm going to die. And then what started happening, Rob, is I started having those when I was sober. And
Oh no.
I got real scared. Ended up dropping out of school. And it was weird because like no one could diagnose it. And so I starting to think I'm losing my mind. And
Right.
this is all when I was, 19, that sort of thing. And I mean, I'm grateful for it because it helped me to find God. But I was such in a bad state. And that I remember I remember when I was in college, I went to like first class and they gave kind of the syllabus and they said at the end of the semester, you're going to have to give a presentation in front of these 20 people. And I immediately go drop the class. I'm like, I cannot talk in front of anyone. And so when I became a disciple, it like was gone. I just felt like I was totally healed from it and I was good to go. And so going to the ministry, I'm like, sure. I'm like, it was wild. It was this wild turnaround where I had no fear again. And then once the pressure of ministry started mounting, maybe about year 8 in Toledo, it came back with a vengeance. And I got I got to a point where I just couldn't preach. I couldn't get up in front of people without having kind of like a heavy sedative. And I know this all sounds really, really strange, but, and that's when I went to Worcester and Tom's like, no, we're going to work with you. And went and did a ton of therapy. I've tried all kinds of different things. And, I would say I've got it to a very manageable state. I'm not free of it by any stretch of the imagination. But I've definitely got this thing pretty well managed, if that makes sense. So still struggle, but obviously I'm 47. I've been doing this since I've been 20. So
What do you do? What do you do now
zone.
when you feel a panic attack coming on? When you feel the anxiety rising, you say like, oh, here it comes. Like, what's your routine? What's your
Oh man, I've worked on this forever. So the thing about panic is it's really strange. You're not actually afraid you're going to die. You're afraid you're going to be humiliated. This is the best way to explain it. The person who has people struggle with panic on like airplanes, right? They're not afraid they're going to die. They're afraid they're going to upset everyone by having to reroute the plane. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of this weird thing. And so public speaking it's like, it's rough. It's like, oh, I'm up there and there's people start to panic, bro, when they feel like there's no escape, right? So when you're on an airplane, there's no escape. When people are
right?
in a
Sure.
car, there's no escape. Yeah,
Right.
get up in front of a crowd of people and there's an expectation of 35 minutes that you're going to be speaking. And in the first minute, you just feel like I'm dying. It becomes challenging. So the thing that works for me is this is going to sound really funny. I've become a bit of a prop preacher. And Jesus was a prop preacher. I need things to get the attention off of me. So if you tell me that I have to get up and I only have to go for 5 minutes, I can do it.
Right.
But if you tell me I got to 35 minutes and I'm feeling like death, I can't do it. And so, but if I know in 5 minutes from now, I got a way out of here. And so what I do is my wife and I go over the sermon and she is always on the ready that at any moment, and I'll let her know I'm good today, or hey, be ready. She is ready to come up with it. I'm kidding. I'm not. This is my saving grace. I haven't had a panic attack in about a year now. And
Well,
this last Sunday was a struggle for me. She was ill and wasn't at church.
oh no.
And not having the security of knowing I can get off the stage presents a big I started struggling again. I'm like, oh my gosh. So my wife has really become a huge support. And the brothers in the church know all about it. So, but I can be, I'm up and down a lot when
Okay,
if
so
that makes sense.
when you say you rely on her and you're a prop preacher, what do you mean? Does she get up there and bring you something, or does she get up there and make a comment? Like, what is she doing that helps you when you're facing that?
Well, here's the funny thing. She doesn't do anything. She never comes up there because I don't need her to, because I know she's there. It's the moment that I realize. So again, it's this feeling of I'm stuck. I'm stuck up here, and there's an expectation, and I can't meet it. But early on, I would do a lot of movie clips.
Yep.
I would have a brother, and you get to know the brothers. You're preaching on patience or something. I'd say, hey,
Right.
you know what? I would call on Wednesday one of my friends. Bro, you're super good at that. Would you mind sharing a story this Sunday about that?
Right.
Things like that. So I know in my brain, okay, I can go 5 minutes and I can exit stage left and gather myself if I need to. So I don't know if that makes sense. That's really been the key for me. If I have that, I'm good. If I don't have that, I'm in trouble.
Okay, so knowing that you have like a distraction or something to divert people's attention to helps you, where you don't feel like you're under the spotlight for the entire time.
Right. Bro, okay. I'm in the wrong profession. I'm like the guy working on the towers in New York City in the 30s, and he's afraid of heights. This is not a good combo.
Well, I really,
amen. We're making it work.
I appreciate you carrying your cross in a difficult area. I mean, that's tough.
Yeah.
I mean, there are so many times I'm up there preaching. I'm going, oh, this is tanking. I've got my running dialogue going on this. It's almost like a little, script going on just down the side while I'm talking to myself. Oh, nope, that person's out of it. They're not listening. They're checked out. Oh my gosh, This is. It's bad.
Two places at one time, right? Yeah,
exactly.
That's me as well, because I am speaking. One half of my brain is taking care of the sermon. The other half of my brain is trying to calm myself down.
Oh, yeah.
I will stop speaking, and I'm like, I don't even know what I'm talking about right now. Like, all right, let me get back to the notes. So, yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, it's scary when those panic. It's funny you mentioned that about drugs. I remember before I became a Christian, I was smoking some pot. Got into it for a short period of time, and I had some bad trips. I mean, I smoked, and remember one time I was lying on my bed and I just felt like the blood was rushing from my finger to the other side of my body. And I just was like, I felt like I could hear it just rushing. I mean, I was just like, what is going on? This is so scary.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where I talked to my mom and I said, Mom, I'm having, kind of some panic attacks. And so I went to the doctor and they wired me up and said, okay, we're going to monitor your body for like a day,
Yeah.
And me too. And so they did that. And then the first question the doctor asked me is, they said, have you been using any drugs? And I said,
me too.
I said, nope, I haven't, And so, they monitored me for a day. Of course, I wasn't smoking pot or doing any drugs at the time. So nothing happened. And my mom's, my mom said, how'd it go? And I said, oh, they said, I'm okay. But it cured me. I mean, even before I became a Christian, I'm like, no way, I am not smoking pot anymore. That's so scary. It just, anytime I would do that, my heart would start beating, and then I'd fixate on my heart beating, and I'm like, I'm going to have a heart attack. I mean, it's just scary. So
yeah,
it's terrifying. And it's funny how panic attacks, like recently I was scuba diving in Belize in January, went down there and took a vacation, and we were down about 95 feet. And, I have to really be careful because I can get a panic attack down deep. And the problem is you can't go to the surface right away. You literally can't have a panic attack down there. I mean, it's just not good. But I'm just sitting there having to breathe deeply and just calm myself down because it's scary. A couple of years ago, I was in Cozumel, and I went down, and Pam and I were holding hands, and I had a panic attack. And I just kind of shot for the surface. It wasn't good. I made it through. It didn't have any kind of the bends or decompression sickness, but I just got afraid because I didn't feel like I could catch my breath. But in any case, I feel for you because it's kind of interesting the parallels you're sharing here, because I've got some similar background to what you're talking about there.
Hey, yeah.
Okay, all right. So that's impressive. So you were 8 years in Toledo, then you're 5 years in Worcester, Massachusetts, and then when did you come back to Cleveland? What year?
2017. Beginning of 2017, we started here in Cleveland.
Okay, all right. What's amazing about Ohio? So many big cities. I don't think too much. I'm a West Coast guy. I've been West Coast and Asia all my life. I mean, Dayton, Columbus, Cincinnati, Cleveland, so many big cities there. It's a big state, lots of people, and a beautiful state. When I drove through there, or rode through there on my motorcycle trip 2020, I couldn't get over it. This is a beautiful state. I mean, just beautiful. And, Cleveland has kind of a bad rep in some circles, because of the industry and stuff.
Oh, baby.
When I stayed there, I'm like, wow, this is really beautiful. The area we stayed, it was right on Lake Erie, really close to it. And it was gorgeous, just beautiful brick homes. I mean, I was like, wow, I could live here. This is amazing.
You should try that.
Yeah.
Let's get you out here, brother.
Anyway, okay. So you in a recent talk, you shared some good news. You emailed me and said, man, we got some really cool things going on. And I just wanted you to share what's been happening there in Cleveland coming out of COVID. I mean, I know our church has taken a hit. I know so many churches have taken a hit. I just like, okay, we need to hear some good news coming out of COVID. What's going on there and what's working?
Oh, yeah. We've kind of the painters have kind of nicknamed this year the year of the Lord's favor.
Amen.
It's not us, that's for sure. But it's been cool. Just feel like massive things have happened in the lives of the painters here that we did not expect, did not see coming. But where to begin? So so on a personal note, one of the things that's been really neat is that my family all relocated to Cleveland. It's under kind of a bad circumstance. My sister-in-law, who's my age, we'll just say is not doing well with her health, and they're not a great situation. And the family knew she is going to need a lot of support. And she is just a wonderful woman, but they were living out in Vail, Colorado. My parents were out in Vail, Colorado. I'm like, there is no way they're ever going to become disciples. Like, this is never going to happen.
Right.
And next thing you know, my parents had relocated to Florida. And then they said, you know what? We think the family needs to be together. We all want to move. We're all going to move back to Cleveland because I grew up here. Like, it'll be a homecoming. So my parents moved up here and bought a home. About a mile from us. And then my brother and sister-in-law and their family moved here. And I was like, okay.
Wow.
Okay. Like, I never expected that to ever happen. And immediately, I'm like, I don't know what this means spiritually. But immediately, right from the get-go, they said, okay, well, we're coming to church. And so my sister-in-law and my parents had been coming to church faithfully since, this all happened in the last fall. So it's been less than a year. But my sister, who... I guess you can edit this out if you need to. She's got early onset dementia. And so it's a really sad situation, right? And she's still she's with us right now. Like she's there, but we kind of know what's coming. And she's, there's definitely signs of slippage. But she immediately starts coming to church and she eats it up. She's like, this is the greatest thing ever. Big Catholic family, but she's at our church like, this is the greatest thing. And Rob, she starts asking right away, do you think I need to get baptized? Those are first questions. I was like, that's a great question. We should sit down and talk about that. And so, it's a little bit tricky, with kind of where she is, and her ability to retain things. But we studied the Bible with her in a very kind of simplistic way. And she just got baptized about 2 months ago, which was like,
that is so awesome.
Holy smokes, this is so cool. So that was just an unbelievable blessing. So like,
wow.
And bro, that just came out of nowhere. This was like, there was a conversation maybe early July of, hey, what if we moved to Cleveland? And by mid-August, they both owned homes in Cleveland. Like this did not, so we were just it's been awesome. So that was incredible.
Wow. So that's your sister-in-law.
That's my sister-in-law. That's my brother's
wow.
wife.
Okay. So, I mean, just the thought leaving, for those who don't live in the country, in the U.S., Vail, Colorado is a super expensive, exclusive ski resort area in the mountains of Colorado. I mean, it's just like, it's one of the most expensive places in the world to live. And then, of course, Florida is a big retirement area. To go back to Cleveland, that's what a shock. You just don't do that.
It's the new trend, baby. Everybody should move north when they retire, not south.
There you go. That's fantastic. Congratulations.
Yeah, that's been like, oh, thank you, God. Like, that was absolutely, just stunning. I think from a church perspective, we one of the things that we did, we had kind of a game plan. And the game plan was we'd always talked about wanting to buy a building. Our church has gotten a little bit older. And, it's nobody cares when you're 20 if you're bouncing around from community center to high school, gym and cafetorium to whatever. You get a little older, you're like, I'm kind of done with this, right? Setting up the sound. And so, but during COVID, we got, basically the school that we were meeting for understandably said, we can't have you back. There's just too much uncertainty. We can't be bringing new people in. And so we were, in the desert for about a year, and everybody was, right, just doing kind of video sermons and stuff like that, which, by the way, for my anxiety was the greatest year ever. I can pre-record a sermon. Like, woo! I was a year without anxiety. I was fired up. But then we decided, hey, maybe now's the time to buy. And with, everything, anyway, we ended up with a spot in downtown Cleveland, about a mile from Cleveland State University. And that was, we were fortunate to find it, but that was kind of the game plan is what if we need to rebuild the youth, and what if we could get by, Cleveland's not a huge college town, but Cleveland State makes just too much sense in that the students that go there, I'd say 90% of them are from Cleveland, and 90% of them are going to stay in Cleveland. And so it just made too much sense. So we actually purchased a building, which was kind of unifying, right? Like, we had to kind of rehab, this thing had to be rehabbed. So the brothers stayed busy during COVID. We were tearing down walls, and there's pictures of us with our suits on because there's mold, but we had a lot of fun with it. But the real turning point was, we did this midweek, and I talked about, hey, we need to get younger, and I just felt like a broken record.
Right.
And a brother came up to me, and she emailed me that night, and it just had one question. And he said, thanks for the lesson. What's going to be different this time? And I know him. I love him. So it wasn't like, it wasn't a critical thing, but you have to know him to understand. And I went, ooh, I don't want to answer that, because I know what he's saying. He's saying we got to put the work in if we're going to do this.
Right.
And I do feel like God has gifted me, even though I'm old, to work with campus students. And I looked at my wife and said, George is right. I think we need to just we just need to become the campus ministers of this church and really make that our focus. And so we did. And we had one student. He was at Oberlin College, which is almost an hour away. More on that in a second. But my wife and I just said, okay, let's go there and let's pace ourselves, but let's try to reach. No, we didn't try to pace ourselves. We took 5 days and we reached out to 100 people for 5 days.
Wow.
And then we had our Bible talk, and we didn't know what to expect. There's no students in the group. It's just us. Right. It's 2 old people.
Wow.
And we showed up, and there was probably about 10 students. And, bro, we've had a Bible talk going there ever since. And it was like, oh, my goodness, this has been really, really cool.
Wow.
And we kind of slow played it the whole time, but we have our regular crew that comes. There was one gentleman who showed a lot of interest. And so we studied the Bible with him. And then next thing you know, he's taking the bus and he's coming to church with us. And then he starts bringing his younger brother. And his younger brother's more open than he is. And long story short, they were both baptized on the same day together. So we're like, see, the plan. It's more than just campus, right? You reach out to Cleveland State, you can really, anyway. So that was really cool. And then this brother at Oberlin kind of independently had told me before all this, he went out there and he was a freshman. And I'm like, is this guy going to stay faithful? How do you do this? He doesn't have a car. He's an hour away. But we're able to make it work. And by the end of his freshman year, he got really inspired. And he said, Ryan, I want I want to start a Bible talk here at Oberlin. And I said, okay, Dylan, we can do that. If you want to do it and you're going to commit to it, I'll come out here once a week and we'll do it. And so sure enough, that really aligned well with this new campus vision. And that's been the hot spot. There's been 3 people baptized at Oberlin College.
Wow.
And Oberlin College, bro, it's the most liberal college in all of Ohio. I've never seen anything quite like it. I've been to New England. I've seen liberal colleges. This one takes the cake. this is the most liberal. And so, so we've seen just a bunch of students get baptized. And then just kind of independently, like God's been working. There's a brother and his mother lives in Youngstown, Ohio, which is about an hour away. It's a little Bermuda Triangle thing going because we have a church in Akron and a church in Pittsburgh. And we kind of take turns whenever there's Youngstown baptisms, but it's Cleveland's turn. So his mother got baptized in Youngstown and then baptized her, I'm going to mess this up. Is it her niece? Anyway, so we all of a sudden have 2 disciples in Youngstown, which is really neat. And, and just kind of other things, just people kind of coming out of the woodwork. And we've had 9 people baptized this year, which for us has been, we started the year with 85. And so having 9 baptisms, and then another couple came over from, the quote unquote traditional Church of Christ. And they've been coming for a year and they placed membership with us. And it's just been like, hey, we're almost back to 100. It's been a really good year.
Oh, that's so you started the year in your church at 85. You've had 9 baptisms.
Yeah. Okay. So let's just be clear. Okay.
Sure.
These years have been rough in Cleveland. When we came here, there was 120 disciples. So please don't look at me and go, wow, there's been 6 very lean years
right.
of non-growth, where we are going the wrong way. And just feel like this year is the year of the Lord's favor. Like, oh my goodness. And even this week, I got 2 more people that just contacted me online, and a brother from LA. Hey, my nephew has been studying. He wants to get baptized. He lives in Cleveland. Like, it's just been kind of one of those years where things are just going well.
That is so exciting. That's great. Well, I know we took a hit after COVID and our membership dropped, and it's, I think many, many churches, if they're being honest, have really experienced some decline and a negative direction because of COVID and just the after effect of that. But if you could break it down for me, like if a person wants to get their church revived, has experienced, maybe they're leading a small church or a mission, and things have not gone well for a while. And they're like, man, I got to bootstrap my church. I've got to see something happen. What could they do? What would you advise them to do? What did you do? And what could they adopt from what you did? What would you say to do?
I would say, and this pertaining to me, this is what I would tell myself.
Okay.
Get focused on something evangelistically. I don't know, whatever that thing is. Just go get focused on it. What happens to me, Rob, is I feel like I can thrive much better in a situation where I'm a campus minister, where the target is right in front of you. Leading a church is tricky, right? Oh, I want this target. Oh my goodness, my friend is sick and he's in the hospital, and will you go visit him? And oh my goodness, this person no longer wants to be in the song ministry. We don't have a song leader anymore. I just get run in a bazillion different directions. And so for me, what was helpful is just saying, this is what I'm going to do. And if everything else isn't awesome, it's okay. I can't make everything awesome. I'm going to get really focused in this area. And our church is great. We have 85. We're not sitting here with 15 people. 85, there's a lot of great people who are doing tons of work in the church. But I would say get focused and find your passion. You know what I mean? Like, I've always said, when I don't have a vision, I am flopping in life. Like, I am just not doing good. But when I have a vision of like, hey, God is sending me to do this, that gets me up in the morning. I get fired up about that.
Right. So get focused, get a vision. That's great. Well, I think that's so powerful. It's great. So you had like 3 baptisms at Oberlin?
At Oberlin College, yeah.
And then you've had some at Cleveland State?
Yep, Cleveland State, yep.
A couple there, and then a couple in Youngstown, which is kind of in between 3 other churches in Ohio.
Those aren't campuses, but those are not campus students, but yeah. So I think it's been it's been 4 college students, and then the guy's younger brother, who's a senior in high school, junior in
That
high school. Anyway, he's
that
just kind of
is
roped into the campus. He's with us,
that is so
and then
cool. How having 9 baptisms in it. I mean, to see like over 10% of your membership baptisms. That's amazing. How's that affected the spirit of your church overall?
it's been phenomenal. For better or for worse, it's funny. I've always kind of said I'm not like a Sunday baptism guy. I'm like, hey, when someone's ready, they're ready. Let's do it. I understand that there's something powerful, though, about the Sunday morning baptism. And most of these have been baptized, excuse me, on Sunday mornings in front of the church. And the latest one was really, it was super exciting because it was the 2 brothers who got baptized together.
Wow.
And then there was another guy unrelated to them, but a student at Oberlin. And to see 3 young men, they were all under the age of 20, up there in kind of our aging church. That church was fired up.
Wow.
It was exciting. It was
Yeah.
like, oh my, and it's just, I don't know, there's something cool in any time in life when you try to put together a plan and it actually kind of starts to work. It's
Yeah.
just super exciting. It's like, it's working.
That's right.
we're adding younger people.
That's
Hey.
right. Well,
So
especially when that person said, "Hey, how's it going to be different this time?" Now, have you gone back to that person and said, "Hey, I told you so"?
uh, no, no, man, that's George Williams. That's E.F. Hutton. You don't talk back to E.F. Hutton. When he speaks, he doesn't say much, but when he says something, you take it to heart. But
But
no,
it must have
I
felt
actually had
so
it.
good
Hey,
though
hey,
to
George.
it must have been felt so good though to actually have risen to the challenge and said, "Hey, you know what? God came through, and look at
That's
that.
right. That's right.
That's great." What motivates you? What gets you up in the morning? I mean, that's you're 47. You've been in the ministry a while. You've gone through some tough times, um, and yet you're winning. I mean, God is moving. You're seeing souls saved. You feel like you're fulfilling your purpose. What's motivating you? How do you? It's easy when you start feeling like it's going down to just kind of crawl into a hole. How
Oh
do you
yeah.
dig deep for motivation?
Yeah, and I've been in the hole a long time. It's not been going good for me for a long time. Um, I would say my motivation. All right. I hope this doesn't sound like I'm, kissing up too much. I think you've been a huge motivation, Rob. I'm serious. During COVID, the era of the spiritual podcast started popping up. And in our family of churches, there was a lot of ones that were calling into question a lot of things. And I was finding myself getting really, really irritated by those and really like, I don't like, and not, I was really trying to listen to him, but it was rough. It just was in a very bad spot. And I talked to the brother who was discipling me, Doug Lambert. He said, Ryan, you got to get off those stinking podcasts. Like you are getting so worked up about everything, but it's not about Cleveland. Like, go get worked up about your church, would you? I'm like, amen,
Right.
amen.
Right.
And I stumbled on the Rob Skinner podcast, and it was like, oh, okay, this I can do. this is positive. Like, I felt like there's a lot of reflection that's been going on. That's not all bad. Please don't
Yeah.
paint me as the guy
Sure.
that's
Of
like
course.
hates any like. No,
Right.
I don't want to be the old wineskin, right? I do want to
Right.
listen to people and all that, but it was really taking a toll on me. And I just felt like a positive, encouraging type thing that you were putting out there, and your spirit was unique in that I feel like I share your spirit, but I had lost it. Like
Mm.
you're like, hey, how are we going to get to 1 million people?
Right.
That's my kind of talk. Like I love those types of conversations. And so that really helped me. Even this last thing, I told your wife, we didn't have the money to go to Dallas. And
Mm.
but the way it worked out, I wanted to go to the conference, small church conference. I'd heard so much about it. I'd never been to one. And so my wife actually started traveling to Toledo to help out with their women's midweeks. And we were taking that mileage money. And that's how we got to the Dallas conference. I'm like, and I told the church, I told the leaders, this is when I was not in a good spot. It was January of 23. I said, guys, I don't ask for much. You got to get me to Dallas. I just feel like there's something happening with these churches that I just need to be a part of.
Yeah.
And they were great. Cleveland helped out and all this, but we got there. But what was cool is I kind of had that the change had started to happen. And so I actually came into Dallas, not in a down spot, but in a pretty good spot. But so I would say that I need to be around encouraging people. I need to be around people that have vision. I need that. If I don't have vision, what is it? When there's no vision, the people perish. Well,
That's right.
I'm the people. I perish.
Right. Wow. Well,
So
thank you.
That's a big part of it. And then then kind of finding your own zone, right? Like, all right, I'm old and I realize, but I'm still effective on campus. We're going to do that. I like that. So
yeah. But you know what, Ryan? You're not old. You're 47. You're actually right in the middle of your prime. I consider the prime 40 to 60. You're in your prime years. You're in your best years of ministry in life, all of your experiences there, plus your health, and God is working in your life, which is so, so encouraging. What advice would you give to a person who wants to make this life count?
My goodness. So I've been listening to your podcast a long time, and I thought, how am I going to answer that question? If I were ever on this podcast, I'm going to kind of come out of left field for this one. I would say, obviously, you got to devote your life to the Lord. But if I'm talking to disciples, people who have made Jesus the Lord of their life, I would say you got to have some fun. You got to enjoy your life. Enjoy. Right. There was times in life where I felt like ministry was like bricks without a straw, right? Like, and those seasons happen, and that's okay. It's okay. Right. Sometimes that happens, and you got to work hard, and there's not a lot in it. But I've kind of found my zone where I was always a very guilt-ridden minister. Do more, do this.
Right.
I just think you've got to be able to find that balance. And so to make this life count, you devote your life to the Lord, but you got to love your life. Yeah. I don't want to be devoted to the Lord, and be dead man walking. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't want to be like that guy.
No.
I don't want to be like, you know what I mean? I want to live my life for the Lord, and I want people to be like attracted to that, right? Like,
yes.
Oh, look, that was what one of the first things, my first observations about our church when I was 20 years old is these are the happiest Christians I've ever seen.
Right.
Like, I'm used to Christians kind of being these kind of stuffy people that are, like, I don't know, kind of out of touch.
Right.
And so I would say, whatever it is, find your lane, enjoy your life, enjoy your Christianity, and use whatever it is that your passions, and use that for God's glory. That's my answer today.
I think that's such great advice. I mean, that just rings true for me. I'm like, you got to have some fun, because there's a lot of negative things in this world, and if you don't, you just get beaten down. And so I love that attitude, and I would just share that 100%. So it's been great talking to you and just getting to know you a little bit more. I go, wow, we got a lot of connections there. That's really, really interesting to me. I want to wish you all the best. Thank you so much for what an inspiring year you guys are having. And I hope that just spreads to all of our churches, that churches across the world are just experiencing that kind of thing. And especially in Western countries, I think it's really inspiring to see that kind of growth coming out of COVID. And so all the best to you, and I'll be praying for your work there. Thank you for joining me on the program.
Thanks, Rob. Pleasure is all mine.
And thanks for joining the program. It's been great to talk to you. Thank you for your support. I want to just talk to you about how you can support the program. First of all, hit the subscribe button. Let people know about it. Secondly, read and review one of my books. I've written a couple books. One is How to Plant and Grow a Church. And the second book is called Courage, How to Make This Life Count. Now, this book, Courage, How to Make This Life Count, I wrote, and I actually wrote it so that you can use it in a small group discussion. And I'm actually going to be using it for the first time in my own church this summer. We're going to be using it for discussion. And so it's a very short book, and I share a lot of personal stories in it. And I share primarily from my own personal struggles in overcoming my fear and trying to become a more courageous Christian and person. And so it's got a lot of chapters on how to grow in your courage in the various areas that offer challenges to us in our life, whether it's money, relationships, evangelism. Lots of things demand courage if we're ever going to grow in those areas. So I'll let you know how it goes in our church as in our small groups this summer. We're going to be meeting and going through the book. So you can find both those books on Amazon.com, and I hope you'll enjoy them, because my goal is to inspire you to make this life count, to live a no regrets life, and to multiply disciples, leaders, and churches. Have a great day. and make this life count.